welcome back to the channel. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. You're watching the most objective magic review channel here on YouTube. Today I've got another requested magic review, and this fits in perfectly with the material that I've been reviewing recently. This is Joseph B's Against All Odds. Now, this is an impossible location effect. You may be familiar with Joseph B. He's put out a plethora of card effects on Penguin Magic. They're single download effects. You may not be aware that he's actually a lawyer, and I guess he does this part-time. Now, I've actually reverse engineered many of his effects by accident just by watching the trailers, because he usually puts a full uncut trailer. So a lot of times I'll just watch the trailer of an effect that he's put out, and I'll immediately see the method just watching the trailer. Now, this trick, I watched it and I could not figure it out just by watching the trailer. To me, it was not obvious at the time, which is why I picked this up, and I'm glad I did, because it's just another tool for the arsenal. And as usual, I'm going to try to give you guys a good idea of what this effect is about, give you guys my thoughts, answer your questions, go over my rating, and I'm going to give you another alternative effect that you may want to consider just because I think it's better than this effect. Although, again, that's my opinion. So let's get into Against All Odds. What is this? This is an impossible location effect where you take a deck of cards, you have a spectator cut off some cards, look at a card, they're going to shuffle that packet, and then they're going to take the other half of the deck and shuffle that, and then you're going to have them shuffle both of the packets together. And under these conditions, letting them shuffle them multiple times, you're going to take the cards back yourself, you're going to go through the deck, and you're going to locate their card. Now, in the instructional video, you do get this presentation where you tell a spectator that you're going to go through the deck to look for their card, and you tell them, just think of the color, and then you're like, I'm getting a sense that it's red, am I right? And they'll be like, yeah, and then you're like, all right, think of the suit, and you go through it like that various times until you pull their card out and reveal it. That's what the effect is. It's very straightforward and very quick. Now, if we look at the ad copy on this one is accurate because they advertise that there's no gimmicks, there's no short cards, there's no sticky stuff, there's no markings, there's no peeking, and you're using just a regular deck of cards. All of that is accurate and true. Some other questions you may have about this effect is how difficult is it to perform? It's really not difficult at all. I can't say that it's self-working because there's a small amount of memory work involved that you have to remember yourself, but I would say that it's beginner level. There is no sleight of hand whatsoever. In terms of audience management, it's very minimal, and Joseph B gives you some tips near the end of the instructional to help you with the audience management. There's no angle restrictions, and the effect, as I mentioned, doesn't use any sleight of hand. In terms of whether or not the effect is repeatable, it is not repeatable in that moment because there is a setup involved, and because of that, it is not an impromptu effect, which may be something else that you're wondering about. And I did say that there is some memory work involved. There's very minimal, simple memory work involved. You do have to remember the order of a couple simple cards. It's not difficult, but this is the type of effect that if you leave it by the wayside for like a couple of months, you'll probably forget that. And who do I think would like this? I think anyone who's into card magic probably would like this effect. So let's get into my impressions of this. What did I think about it? I thought it was a good effect. I didn't think it was bad at all. And I thought that it was clever the way that Joseph B has combined two principles to come up with this effect. It's very fooling. There's no question about that. The actual two principles that he uses, you can find them in the Encyclopedia of Card Tricks. But they're obviously separated into different tricks. What he's done is he's taken them and put them together to come up with this impossible location effect. In terms of the positives here, I think what's really positive here is that you have an impossible location, which is really easy to perform because there's very minimal spectator management here for the most part. It feels really hands-off. It's very quick. And it's an effect that, you'll probably really fool a lot of people with. I think those are the real positives. For me personally, the negatives of the effect was that obviously, one, that the deck really can't be freely shuffled before you begin. And for me, that's kind of a big negative. just because it kind of screams like there's some kind of setup or order to the cards. Obviously, you can do some kind of false shuffle, but it's never going to be the same as like a freely shuffled deck where you're just freely, carelessly shuffling the deck in front of the spectator. Obviously, for me, that was a pretty big negative. The other thing for me that was a negative was that you have to go through the deck more than once before you know what their card is. Personally, for me, that kind of felt like a negative. I did like, though, how Joseph B. kind of incorporated that in the presentation of have them think of the color of their card and then you're kind of going through it. But you do have to go through the deck more than once before you'll know what their card is. Personally, I didn't really like that much. And then the other thing I didn't really like was that there is some memory work involved, like I mentioned, because, you know, in a couple of months, you'll forget that. So unless you actually write that down somewhere and have that where you can readily get to it, this is an effect that you may not remember exactly how to perform it if you don't perform it regularly. So those are my impressions. And I'm going to give you guys another alternative in a moment of another effect that I think is even better, but it looks and feels exactly the same. So my rating for this is as follows. You can see here the rating, and obviously for originality, I only gave him 2.5 out of 5 because the principles are not his. He just put them together. But for creativity, obviously I gave him 4 out of 5 because it was very creative to do that. In terms of practicality, it's not exactly that practical because you do have to have a setup ahead of time. So it's not an impromptu effect. I thought the teaching was excellent though. And as you can see, I do think that there are some other alternatives that may be better than this. And finally, the price, I rated this 3 out of 5 because I honestly think it's actually overpriced. I think for this one simple trick, probably should have charged just $5 for it. Anyway, that gives us a final rating of 3.42 out of 5, which is still a favorable rating. I think this is an effect that a lot of people would still like. Now, what do I recommend? What is the alternative effect that I think is just as good, if not better, is this effect, which is called a test discovery. Now, this effect is by Dr. Buell, and this was published in John Northern Hilliard's book, Greater Magic. So if you have Greater Magic at home, then you probably have it lying on your shelf. I know a lot of us do, especially if you bought it like I did off of eBay. You can find this effect, which is called a test discovery. And the reason why I like it is because when you start the effect, you openly take the deck and you shuffle it in front of the spectator. You do a riffle shuffle in front of them. Now, you're supposed to do it behind your back, is what it says in the book, although I'm not really a big fan of trying to do that, and I don't think it really matters that much, but that's just my thoughts. You have the spectator select a card, they select a card, and then what you do is you do another shuffle in front of them. You shuffle the cards again, or behind your back if you want to. You have them return the card anywhere they want in the pack. They return the card anywhere they want, and then again, you can give the deck another shuffle behind your back if you want to. But ultimately, you give the cards to the spectator and you let them shuffle the cards as much as they want to. Now, the best part of the effect is the actual presentation of it, because once you're in this spot, you tell the spectator that you want them to just think stop when they see their card. You start dealing cards face up on the table. And when you get to their card, you stop and you're like, whoa, I just heard you say stop. That was really loud. This must be your card. And they'll like just freak out because yes, it will be their card. So what I really like about this version of that type of impossible location effect is that the cards are freely shuffled before you begin. So that will destroy any thought in your spectator's mind that there's any kind of order to the cards. And then they have a free selection of a card. They can put it back anywhere they want. You're shuffling the deck multiple times in front of them. You're letting them shuffle it as much as they want. And then you're seemingly reading their mind because you're dealing cards face up, and then you instantly stop when they see their card and in their mind they think stop. So I think that this is a much better version because not just the fact that you have a lot more freedom in how you perform it, that it just feels a lot more loose, like there's not so much control over the cards, like who cares, like you don't, like there's no order because who cares, I'm just gonna shuffle the whole deck in front of you, like who cares, that kind of thing. But there's also this mental aspect where you're reading their mind in real time. So anyway, if this sounds appealing to you, I would recommend that you go check that out. You can find that in Greater Magic. I always tell you guys, old is gold, and you will find the best effects in the magic literature that has existed for years and years and years. Anyway, that's what I wanted to tell you guys about this effect. Hopefully this will help you in some way, and maybe I've introduced a new magic trick to you. As usual, if you have any questions or comments, just leave them for me below. Thanks so much, guys, for tuning in. I wish you all a healthy and happy new year, and I'll see you guys on the next review.